So welcome to the Customer Catalyst podcast. This is all based around the business book about how to get leaders to think differently about centering the whole organization around the customer now that we're firmly in the customer economy. I'm delighted to welcome Remco Ducchart, Store Development Manager at European supermarket chain Albert Heijn, which is part of the retail giant Ahold Delhaize. Welcome, Remco.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for having me.
So delighted to talk to you. Obviously, we've known each other for some time, and you're a real leader in co-creation, which is one of the key elements of what we call the sea change in the book. And obviously, retail is one of the most customer-led sectors. So tell us about your journey. Sort of where did you grow up, and how did your career start?
Well, I was born in Amsterdam, grew up in Amsterdam, and after my school, I went to study law, tax law, in Leiden University. And well, after that study, I went to companies to talk about the job, and found out that, let's say, the company cultures at the specific tax lawyer companies were not suitable for me. And somewhere I ended up in a job at Reinventing, which is broke now, but was one of the leading department stores in that time. And I went there in a special, let's say, traineeship. First connected to my tax law study, and then I was moving into other kind of projects, also as a client team member with McKinsey. And well, in that journey with from Reisman and McKinsey, I liked working in the store even more, and moved after some years to the Bausor, which is let's say our leading department store in the Netherlands and a part of the Selfridges group in UK. And was there a sales manager in the store in Rotterdam for ladies fashion. And from that moment on, I liked the stores and the store design and how a store worked even more. After the Bausor, I went to SVT, which is a leading retail design company in Amsterdam, for 10 years as well. And after those 10 years, that company changed a bit, and it was a very good time to move back to how we call it at agencies into the client side. And I went.
And is that so? Your passion for design? That's really where you sort of worked in the design consultancy as well as those big department stores, that you got your passion for the customer and how you co-create.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, first really, let's say, with 2 feet on the floor, and finding out that everything you touch on the floor with products and presentations, that customers immediately react, negative or positive, but you get immediately a response from them, which I liked a lot. And let's say in the design agency, we also find out how the stores work with layouts, with the flow of customers, how you can, buy a bit more than they thought they would buy in advance, and of course, do really nice designs. Preferably.
So tell us about, sort of fast forward to now. You work for Albert Heijn, which is a very customer-led retail supermarket chain in the Netherlands, and it's part of Ahold Delhaize retail conglomerate. So tell me a bit about Ahold Delhaize and Albert Heijn.
Yeah, so well, let's say Albert Heijn was one of the first supermarkets in the Netherlands, founded by Albert Heijn. So that's really the name of the founder. We're almost, let's say, there for 140 years even, with more than 900 stores in the Netherlands. And we're part of an Albert Heijn, or part of the Ahold Delhaize group. And Ahold Delhaize group is, let's say, for 60% of our sales dependable on the US stores we have, and the other part is coming from the Europe side, meaning Belgium and the part of the Eastern Europe. So after 2016, we merged with Delhaize, and that meant that we expanded even more in the same areas in Europe as well as in the United States. When you're really keen on facts and figures, then you can download our annual report,
But
I
I
think,
suppose in terms of scale, it's massive. People may not have
yes,
heard about Ahold Delhaize.
yeah,
I mean, isn't it
exactly.
something like 54 million shoppers and 380,000 employees?
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say. That's basically the part we're most proud of, that we are serving, let's say, more than 50 million customers a week via almost 400,000 employees, colleagues
Wow.
in 7,000 stores, bigger stores, smaller stores, specialty stores.
And so tell me about your role as store format development manager. What does that involve?
Yeah, so that means in our company that that I'm basically focused on developing complete new stores or new store concepts, which means that we are looking how the customer wants to, let's say, how he wants to shop, how he wants to do his ideal journey in the grocery store, and make him feel comfortable in it. Always focused on best products, best product presentations, and those should be supported by let's say a great layout and store design. And that's what I'm responsible for let's say creating new store concepts.
Tell us, what was the real catalyst for co-creation at Albert Heijn? Because obviously you're a very strong brand for customers online and in store. What was the real driver for that?
Well, the real catalyst is I think always connected to people, and I'm very keen on, let's say, working together with people in company as well as outside the company, because I think we are a company that's really strongly connected to important suppliers, and I think that you shouldn't see them connected to the word supplier, but they are more or less, because we are so long already connected to each other, they are more or less a colleague. And that's also why I think that you should share a lot of insights. I also share them a lot with new things, new images, new inspiration, just to put everybody's let's say head on. I don't know if that's real English, but to keep everybody going into new ideas, so that they understand what I think we should head for, but that they also respond on those inspiration and those input from us, and show more initiative to come to new ideas faster, because that's basically the most important part, creating it together, sharing insight together, to be able to develop faster than we did.
And so you've talked before about the need to reinvent the store, and particularly now in sort of post-COVID world, there's even greater need to do that. So this was a couple of years ago. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so and it's not rocket science, but what we found out is that we designed and created stores that were too much dedicated to a specific era. And I thought it was necessary to move to, let's say, a store design which is more neutral. So connected to more neutral colors in the shell, so floor, walls, ceiling, to be able to change our stores faster for smaller concepts and modules. Because what you see is that and I think that was in the whole market, let's say, use that that everybody rebuilt or remodeled their stores for 15 years. They basically didn't change their store for 15 years, and then they remodeled it again. And that's not what a customer wants anymore. So in a way, he wants a fixed store, and on the other hand, he expects us to change and develop with new products and new product presentations. Having 7,000 stores, you don't have the time as well as the money to remodel them every week or every month. So you should connect it to specific modules. Yeah. And this more neutral, warm shell helps us to move forward for 20 or 30 years with that shell, and to be able to change modules on the floor that always fit into that same store.
And so before, what was in place that was more inflexible and then sort of needed this change?
I think it was more inflexible, and especially our choices for the colors. And again, the colors on floor. So we had, for example, a very dark brown floor. We had a pretty dark wall, and when we are remodeling now our stores. And we find out that when we don't have enough money, or the floor is still good enough, that we stick to the current floor. And then we see that our latest concept doesn't work that well with this dark floor. Yeah. Which made us, give this insight to change into more neutral colors. because that helps us. Everything sticks to that, or work with the color, you know. If it's a dark fixture or a white fixture or dark wood or light wood, everything works in this more warm, neutral shell. So that's
that neutral shell is that's a good segue into looking at why you then look to co-create with what was then Philips Lighting, which is now Signify, the world leader in lighting. So
yeah,
how did that happen?
Well, well, this is back to your, let's say, the co-creation question. Philips Lighting or Signify is definitely one of our great partnerships, and we work together, I think, already more than 25 years. And somewhere we do those updates together to keep in touch what everybody's innovating and working on. And we had this this great day in the high-tech campus in Eindhoven.
So tell us about that. So that's a global headquarters for Signify in the south part of the Netherlands?
Yeah, exactly, in Eindhoven, which is basically the high-tech part of the Netherlands.
So the Silicon Valley of the Netherlands is where you then live.
Yeah, I think that's the right translation for that area. Yeah, and they have an office there as well. So we had a meeting the whole day, sharing insights, sharing what we were heading for, what they were heading for, and then we had a tour around the campus as well, and they showed us 5 of their, at that time, most important innovations, and that's where let's say the co-creation with Signify started.
And so one of those innovations that you saw that day at the Silicon Valley of the Netherlands was about 3D printing. So what caught your imagination about what 3D printing could do in your stores?
Yeah, well, well, as you can see on the screen, I'm a bit of the, let's say, the older generation, this a bit, not knowing everything about this 3D printing. They showed us all their innovations, and we went into this room where some, very high-tech boys and girls were working on programs to do the 3D printing of the lighting bulbs, more or less. So more the decorative part of the 3D printing. And well, it looked amazing anyway, this room, because it was really like, the startup feeling within a very big company. And on the other hand, I saw already some end results there of their 3D printing. And I was, I think I was flabbergasted about what they were able to print in shapes, sizes, and colors and textures. And so that was where I was becoming very enthusiastic about, how can we make this work quickly into our stores, also helping Signify to develop this 3D printing part of their company, because they were also looking for a way to bring it to the market. So one of the things Philips Lighting or Philips in general was always it was always difficult for them. They had a lot of innovations, a lot of new things, but they didn't know exactly how to bring it to the market. And on this day, it worked together that I thought, well, this is a great idea to put in our stores. And for them, it was a nice way to test it real life in the market. Yeah.
So the next step from that was you worked together with Signify on this co-creation workshop. So talk us through how that happened and what the process was.
Well, first, during that day, of course, I said, well, I would love to test it. They said, let's do it, but then you need to take the next step. So what I started with was to collect all kinds of examples of stores. Basically, then you need to find your inspiration in more, let's say, the fashion world, because the supermarket world is still pretty traditional. We had already some basic lighting bulbs above produce tables, but it could be more fancy. So I started to collect that, and that collection ended up in a one-day, well, not even a complete one day, but a one-day workshop, again on the high-tech campus, with a mixed project team, let's call it a project team, from Signify as well as from Albert Heijn. And we, let's say, shared all our inspiration. We defined the direction we wanted to go to in the store, the type of elements. And after that, basically, we didn't meet until the test in our store. And the time in between, we worked perfectly together via calls, WhatsApp, emails.
And so the team that you brought together, I think people would be really interested to sort of find different sort of roles from Albert Heijn and also from Signify. So tell me the team that you got together to co-create?
Yeah, well, I think from Signify part, it was of course some people from their account department, because
Their
they
account team, yeah,
they needed to take care of us, of course, but also from the design department, from Philips Lighting, from the technical part of the 3D printers. So they collected, let's say, the mixture of commercial design as well as the technical part, so that we immediately knew what was possible or not, technically spoken. And from our side, well, it was me to start with, and some colleagues from real estate, and then we have a mixture of skills in that department of, well, it's close to design, but also helping me to design and realize realistic products, so that we also knew pretty soon that we were able to change the lighting, the current lighting bulbs, into the 3D printed elements.
And then did you also mention that there was like a store buyer, and because you were looking at a potential pilot in the fresh produce section, you had a designer and a buyer as well?
Not at that moment, even they came in a bit later, but the most important part was to create it together and to be sure that we were able to really create it and put it in store.
And so the next step was the pilot, which tell us where and what that was.
Well, it was very interesting because, well, we ended up in printing all kind of, let's say, shapes, textures, colors, and at first we thought, well, let's decide which ones we're going to print for the pilot store. And after a few calls, we said, let's not decide now. Let's print them all and put them into the store, hang them above the produce tables, because that was the area where we were supposed to test it, so above all produce and fruit tables. And we brought it together to the store in Rotterdam. We took our letters and we changed all bulbs into the 3D printed, let's say, lighting elements, including I think 3 or 4 different type of bulbs to test the strength and the warmth of the lighting anyway.
And so in terms of how you work together as a team, you were talking about the rapid prototyping element with the design. So talk us through that.
Yeah, so we really started with sharing pictures, images as an inspiration. The design department of Philips Lighting took those images, created some stories, and obviously we came with, let's say, concepts connected to fruit and produce and fresh vegetables. So to see how we could connect the shapes and the textures and the colors of the.
And so for people listening who perhaps haven't heard about this before, it's all about LED lighting with lights in different colors to attract consumers to come and buy, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a good point, because I'm talking like everybody knows the store and the lighting elements. So that's where we started, and well, they created a booklet with all types of directions. So we skipped some of the directions, and then we moved further with, I think, 3 or 4 directions connected to oranges and to pears and to, well, I don't even know anymore, because it's already 3 or 4 years ago that we started with it. Because as you notice, we are 300 stores further now with those 3D printed elements. But that was basically a back and forward via email and calling. And after choosing the directions and the colors and the textures, they started to print it. And that took some time then, because they were really, like what I said, like a startup. So they didn't have so many printers already. And we needed to wait a bit before they were all ready, because we needed, I think, for the test 40 or 50 of those elements. So at that time, that took some time. Now they have a plant in Marhezen, a little bit below Eindhoven, where they, I think, have hundreds of 3D printers. And
so when you went to the Rotterdam store with that team from Signify and Albert Heijn, sort of what feedback did you get from the customer? Because that ultimately that's what we're talking about to grow, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, it was really interesting to notice, because we were working there with our ladders and taking off the old lamps and putting on the new 3D printed elements and the new light bulbs. And we also thought, we've chosen for too many types, too many colors, too many shapes. But customers were shopping as well around us. So some people gave immediately a reaction, said, it's cozy, it's nice. We love it that you change it now and then. But also it's a bit too many colors, whatever. So
this was really dynamic voice of the customer.
Exactly. That was something, it felt like extra present for this whole project, because, well, we didn't organize a customer research, or we didn't have a real questionnaire for the customers. It was just like we were working there, and there was this browse with customers, and we could ask them immediately, do you like it? And and so on and so on. So that helped us during the day, to connect their vision also to our feeling of, now it's a bit too much and we should tone down, etc. So during that day, we could test, let's say, the technical part. How did it work? Is the light good enough? Is it cozy enough? Isn't it becoming too technical or so? Including, let's say, immediate customer response. And
so as a result of that instant dynamic feedback you got from consumers and also your staff, what decisions did you make then in that co-creation process?
Well, after the day, we thought, okay, it was, it looked very nice with all the textures and the shapes and the colors, but maybe even felt more like a small cozy cafe than a good supermarket with a produce department. So we toned it down to basically, I think, 2 shapes, 2 colors, and 1 texture. And it became more transparent, more light. That was the one direction, and the other one was with more orange, because that's connected to our promo color. So above the tables where we always have the promo in produce, you have them in an orange look.
And so my understanding is that you then cut down the number of colors from 8 down to 2 with the orange and the white that fitted in with your promotions, and that then worked.
Yeah, and I think we from 8 to 2, and I think we toned down from 4 to 1 texture, and I think also from 4 or 5 shapes to 1 shape, no 2 shapes. So
that really brings us neatly on to sort of what impact do you think co-creation has had on Albert Heijn and your customers?
Yes, so I think it helped us a lot that day to create something in a very quick way together, which helped us to be able to make the project department more warm, cozy, and attractive for our customers. I think that was really what we learned together. Is that responding to your question, or?
Yeah, no, definitely. And how many stores have you now rolled that out to then across the Netherlands?
I think we're now heading for number 300 or something like that, because we're only introducing it in stores we're really remodeling, because it's too complicated and too expensive to roll it back to current stores, because then you need also, let's say, cables and electricity and so on. And now we've created it very simple into our remodel program, so everybody can hang them up. And it's even with, let's say, even with a very nice system, because that's what we're heading for now, that it's easy to take off and to change into a new version. Because you can imagine that after 3 years, at least we want to move to a next level, or to another design, or another color, because that's something connected to where we started, let's say, the podcast, that it's an easy element in a store to change for, let's say, not so much money, to create a different atmosphere and a different feeling in the produce department. And you can
interestingly on that, I was when I was in Amsterdam, going past the your supermarket shop window, and saw this giant 3D printed orange light, and actually it's amazing the impact it has on you, because it does draw you into the store. And then obviously what you're talking about is then it's almost a beacon to attract customers walking along the street, and then to the fresh produce session. So tell me sort of how staff and customers have reacted to that.
Well, it's something that they reacted on because, and including our staff, so that they really noticed it and they said, well, we like it. And basically one pity of it is that you can't explain every customer that it's 3D printed, that it's printed with a material which is sustainable, that we can take it off and melt it back to be able to reprint it again, because that's the story you can't tell them, and that's even nicer. But we noticed that they gave us back that they felt it helped for the total atmosphere in the produce department, which we also, let's say, saw back in our net promoter score. People responded really very positive to this, let's say, for us, small addition to a produce department. Yeah.
And so tell us, what was the net result? Because I think a lot of people would be interested to see like how you've measured it. So you've talked about the impact of, you know, the impact in getting more customers into the store, improving their experience. But so what was the end result with the net promoter score?
So the net promoter score, I think, you know, I don't know it exactly because it's a bit ago, but it's between 10 and 20% higher than we were before, which is very interesting. And then still, you know, because I'm always critical at those figures as well, you know, then still it's difficult if it's purely for those lamps or it's the total atmosphere, but it definitely helped in total atmosphere of the produce department. That's what we noticed. Yeah.
And are you now then building on that co-creation with Signify to co-create with other companies to improve the whole store experience?
Yeah. So to finish the part with Signify, we expanded it even into very nice lighting above the bakery tables, above the flower tables. And in the next store at the end of this year, we will move to another type of lamp above in the pastry department. So we're expanding with the 3D printed lighting, which is very nice. And yeah, we tend to move into more co-creation, because what we see is that if you share your know-how and your insights and are willing to be honest to each other about, you know, what you want to share, you know, you should be open about it, that you can gain so much time as well as quality when you really develop it together. Because everyone in a project team feels that he's owner of the new idea and the new creation, and those co-creation things, you know, it depends on projects into the store building part, how to do it smarter, faster, cheaper, but also connected to merchandise, for example. So our category managers, when they create new meals, they also do that together with our suppliers and with cooks. And you know, it sounds very logical, but it's very interesting that they connect their insights and know-how also together to be able to create the best meal for the best price, the best quality. So I think that we do a lot already within co-creation. Yeah.
And one thing that was really interesting, you in terms of this whole innovation with 3D printing and the sustainability, which consumers are more and more concerned about. Tell people about the benefit of, you know, benefits of doing 3D printing with lighting, with this LED lighting in the store.
Yeah. Well, let's say I think there are for two, let's say, two parts benefits, because it's also a big benefit for Signify as well as for us. So what you see is that you almost can create your own design and your own amount of necessary lamps on demand per store. So for us, it's very easy to say, okay, this store needs 20 lamps, whatever, and print them. And Signify doesn't have to have them on stock anymore, because they get the order, they print it, and then it's brought to the store, which is obviously very, very smart in the whole supply chain. I know from their side, we're working good together with Kevin Rijmakers, one of the guys in the 3D printing company there. You know, it's now possible for them to create a design and a lamp and then send the design on its own to another factory of them. So they are starting to build factories all over the world, printing factories. So it's not necessary to produce something in the Netherlands, fly it to Shanghai or whatever, which is very unsustainable and very expensive. So that's also for me, very interesting to be part of.
Yeah, it's amazing. So basically, the plastic that is used in creating this lighting that for the LED lights is 100% recyclable.
Yeah, and that's still one of my, let's say, my bucket list projects with them, to even bring a container with 3D printers to a store, take everything out, melt it into, let's say, the beginning of the product again, and reprint them. Yeah, and they're really capable of doing that now. And yeah, we're at the beginning of that project, because that was postponed a bit due to, well, this COVID era. But it's basically ready. We have new designs. We have the plan to change the lamps in 3 stores, and take the old ones out, bring new ones in, and melt the old ones, let's say, back to, how to say that?
Yes. So just explaining it for listeners, that, for example, in your busy period, say coming up to Christmas, you could then very quickly in a store take away the existing 3D printed plastic sort of lights that on the bakery or the fresh produce section, and then melt that down, 100% recyclable, and then very quickly give a new look that would then, might be a red for Christmas, for example.
Exactly. Even that would be possible. Yeah. So what we see now, until now, is that we use it for a longer time, but in theory, it would even be possible to do that to change the whole atmosphere into the Christmas period, or into a special promotional theme or whatever. We didn't do that yet, but in theory, that would be possible. Yeah.
And so we touched on COVID, obviously massive impact for everybody in work and home lives. What do you see happening in retail? Do you think this will lead to a greater shift to need to co-create with your sort of customers and partners?
Yeah, I think, well, what we've seen these 3 months is that, well, luckily, as a supermarket store, we're very important for all people, because we sell food, we could stay open. And what you see is that sounds maybe a bit arrogant, you didn't see anything new happen. But what happened was that everything happened so much faster. So what we see, like all other food companies as well, is the online sales, which is exploding. What we see is that people move to self-scan, paying by themselves, using our self-scan terminals, using Apple Pay, etc., much faster than before. So it was all on trend. We were all connected to it. But what we see, for example, in this time, is that we even changed the focus in investments from remodeling total stores into the, for example, to putting money in the paying area, to change the regular checkouts into self-scan checkouts, for example.
Oh.
So that's what we really decided in this period. We have the technical skills for it. Okay, you need the money for it, but we basically change also focus in that. And what you also see in other companies. So it's online. It's customers want to do everything themselves. They're not in need for service departments, for example. They don't want to ask for pre-sliced cheese or whatever,
or meats or whatever.
So those trends are moving much faster. And the other thing what you saw in this era is that, basically the good companies who have those skills responded very quickly. So we talked in advance already about, for example, Pret-a-Manger, which I like a lot. And what you see is that they notice, okay, we have great suppliers, we have great food. So we can also be something like more a supermarket chain and create food boxes with ingredients from Pret-a-Manger and deliver them at home. They transformed their assortment also very quickly into assortment that you can take away and heat up at home. And I think that's very interesting, that you see what you can do with the skills you already have, but how you can, let's say, transform your business from a regular, in this case, Pret-a-Manger takeaway or restaurant into a very small convenience grocery store. And that's very interesting. And I think that they're very smart. There were some other companies as well, but I follow them a bit via a colleague and friend in UK, and it's very interesting how they transform. So yeah.
Yes, and I think those customer-led companies like Albert Heijn and Pret a Manger have really shown how fast you can be, and actually how co-creation can help you change the store experience very quickly, which obviously you've needed to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's maybe, and I think you summarized it very well. You know, that's maybe the biggest impact of this whole COVID period. You must be very flexible, and it must be easy to change within the scope of your company, within the skills of your company, to change, the focus a bit in investments and in the innovation part. Yeah.
So that's a really nice way to summarize. So in the book, I remember when we were talking together for the research for it, you talked about 3 co-creation lessons. So tell us about that, because I think people are really interested to listen to that.
Yeah. Well, I that's not my strongest point, so I don't know them by heart. But what you see is that I think it's important with co-creation to share it, to make everybody enthusiastic. And
So
that's
say it.
Yeah, to say it, and that's not only the project team, but also the people around you. And should be balanced a bit, because it should not end up in finding guidance in the whole company, because then the whole speed might be lost. So that's one thing. I think it's very important that you trust each other, and the trust means that, because in a way, you have some sort of legal connection. So in our example, Philips Lighting as well as Ahold are connected to the stock exchange, so we should be careful with our information. And on the other hand, you should share everything, because otherwise you will lose quality or impact. So those 2 are, I think, the most important. So say it, and be
open with information, you were saying, weren't you? And I think one interesting thing I remember you saying is that during the whole co-creation process, you said don't assume people have the information or know the same information as you.
That's it, because especially when you start such a project, every information can be interesting. And we also show together that even in one day you can decide together if it's for that specific project interesting enough or not. So don't decide on your own if it's interesting to share or not. Bring it into the team and decide together in a quick way, because you can decide very quickly together, in a quick way, what's interesting for this specific project or not. Yeah. And I think that those 2 were the biggest learnings.
And then I think the third one you were talking about is about stakeholder relationships, building those co-creation relationships early.
Yeah, and of course that depends a bit on, let's say, the type of project. This one was pretty impactful for customers, but it was not necessary to immediately ask the CEO if he was willing to support or sponsor the project. So yeah, you need the guidance in the company, but again, you also should be careful not to involve too many people, because everybody wants to say something about it, knows something about it, and in the end, you don't have your 3D printed lighting bulb.
Brilliant. So Remco Ducchart, thank you very much for sharing your co-creation story at Albert Heijn. It's an amazing story, and it really proves, in that fast-moving retail sector, how customers can be better served by that. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me again, Daniel. It was a pleasure.
So thank you very much for listening. And as you know, it's all about centering the whole organization around the customer. So do share the podcast and the stories via the Twitter feed at thecustcatalyst.com. And also you can find more information about our Customer Catalyst community on the customercatalyst.com website. Join you soon for the next episode.